So today is one of those days where I'm definitely going to nerd out in a video, and I hope you all just bear with me and hopefully kick an interesting conversation off about the keys to trading card storage and preservation. Yeah? This is like the sexiest topic ever covered by a PokeTuber ever. This is the video that's going to put me on the map. I'm sure of it. All right, let's roll the intro. Hey Gengar Gang, what is going on? My name is Ryan, this is the Analytic Gengar, and welcome to another video. In today's video, friends, we talk about some of the key components to trading card storage and preservation. Now, today's video is brought to us by the PSA blog, of all places. Not probably an uncommon thing, because any fan of the channel knows that I very frequently troll these blogs and these articles because they are excellent snippets of wisdom and information that we can extrapolate into a video and hopefully bring some of this information into the more mainstream components of the hobby. So that's why I do it. As always, the link to this article will be down below. Definitely remind me if it's not. And while you're looking at the description, I know there's a little like button down there. You can go ahead and hit that. And if you enjoyed today's content sincerely, feel free to subscribe to join the Gengar Gang. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with keys to trading card storage and preservation. So, real quick, why is this important? Well, not because PSA got literally 5 shares and that's embarrassing, but because I think this is a topic that gets less talked about than it probably should. A lot of people, including myself, have videos on how to store your booster boxes, how to store your booster packs, how to store your raw cards, blah, blah, blah. But, although we say it as, here's how you store it, we don't necessarily talk about why we do it and why it's important. And that's where the nuance of the situation escapes us. What we're effectively doing is trading card storage and preservation, and it's very important for a variety of reasons. Chief among them, maintaining the quality and the condition of your trading cards. Now, that can be important for a variety of reasons. For example, and this is a very exaggerated case, but if there are only 5 of a trading card that have ever existed, you want to make sure that at least one, if not all 5, are kept in as best condition that they can possibly be. And that is something a lot of people aren't talking about and aren't identifying and stating obviously as a issue within the Pokemon TCG. We exist in an era of the Pokemon TCG, and I personally believe it's going to be one that we'll all look back on and cringe, because many vintage booster boxes are getting all ripped to shreds. And a lot of people don't realize that there are a finite number of boxes left in the world. A lot of people have made a very bold claim in saying that they will never open their sealed collection. And so there's an argument there that they are the preservation and storage experts and, building blocks of our community. But, everything can change if you get bought out, and it's not like you can say, oh, well, as a condition of my sale, I refuse to let you open your booster box. No, if someone like Logan Paul comes around, buys your booster box from you for 100 thou, you can't tell him he is not going to be able to open that booster box the next time he decides to do something on Impulsive or whatever his podcast is. So it's just one of those things where, as much as we know and recognize that a vintage era booster box or trading card is going to need to be preserved and stored, we don't quite articulate it the right way, and I think that's a disservice to this overall community. But my philosophical waxing aside, the article is relatively high level, nothing crazy, but of course I'll kind of trickle in my own thoughts and items as we go along. So obviously the intention is to keep your cards in pristine condition, and the writer of this article wants to give a few thoughts and things, right? So times have changed and rubber bands and shoe boxes are no longer the preferred method. Absolutely right. Things are a lot more high tech nowadays, even if high tech really just means a custom fitted cardboard box as opposed to one you got from your mom. And And then, you know, rubber bands just make me cringe now because I know for a fact I had a Gold Star Pikachu in my pocket on the way to school when I was a little kid. Now, mind you, that card is now in my collection, graded a PSA 9 by the miracles of Alina Lopez's ability to install solar paneling on houses prior to her previous career. But all things considered, it's one of those things. I really don't know or understand how I ever, as a child, thought to take that thing to school with me. Obviously, things are a lot different now, given that there is tons of value in these things, but just to think about the idea of taking such a rare and very cool card and bringing it to school with me in, if I remember correctly, only a penny sleeve, it kind of puts a chill down my spine as a collector. And I guess that's the difference between collectors when you're a kid and collectors when you're an adult. You really do care and prioritize the condition and preservation of the cards a little bit more than you did when you were younger. Yeah, so as you can see, you know, the article goes through a bunch of different limericks about this stuff, but you get the idea. Long story short, no one's keeping their cards like this anymore. If anything, there's a binder for everything nowadays. So, here are some pro tips that you can use. So, preparations before purchase, meaning before you go and buy a whole pack of cards or a booster box or anything like that, you might want to hit up your local hobby shop and get some things in order, right? So first thing is a 3-ring binder with dozens of 9 card pocket sheets. As I was quite literally just saying, yeah, there's a binder for everything nowadays. You don't have to do it the 3-ring binder way. I feel like even that sounds like something from like your like 2011s. Nowadays, Ultra Pro, Cardex, there's a whole bunch on Amazon that you can go pick up. Most of them are usually under $20, and they're usually pretty nice. So I definitely recommend picking those up. They hold 360 cards. I've even done a review on one of them if you want to go take a peek at that. So, you know, all different ways that you can go about storing your cards. 3-ring binders are neat because they're super cheap and theoretically expandable as large as the binder. So if you buy a 4-ring, like a 4-inch 3-ring binder, you can hold as many cards as you can fit in those 4 inches. All you need to do is continue to buy 9 card pocket sheets. But it's one of those things, you can also step it up just a little bit, buy one of those really nice, like, Vault X binders, and then it's a little bit more fancy, it's a little bit more costly, but you do get the added, like, uber fanciness of that. Storage boxes like the one pictured, so these are those, I always equate them to the BCW ones. They're basically just shoe boxes, but specifically cut for trading cards. They origami together, so that's pretty neat. They come flat and then you have to like fold them in the right places and make them the box, which I have always thought is pretty neat, and they're a good way of storing bulk. My issue with this in particular is that it's a great way to end up with a lot of cards that you don't need. In the Pokemon TCG, what I have found is that for the most part, especially for modern, you usually rip packs, whether it be booster box, booster cases, etc., with the intention of pulling all of the ultra rares, usually at a minimum. And then, maybe you go through the effort of assembling a binder's worth of this. So for Evolving Skies or for Fusion Strike, you'll go ahead and, assemble a nice fancy binder. You might put in all the reverse foils or whatever have you, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up in a situation where you have tons of cards and no real use for. Again, it's not like baseball or one of the sports where you're really kind of maintaining an extensive collection for the purposes of doing so. And so there might be a real need for you to manage your bulk, and that's something that we here in the Pokemon TCG face very often. Anyone who's opened a lot of packs knows you end up with a lot of extra cards that you don't really need. And so I actually don't have a need for storage boxes like this one. Don't get me wrong, I made the mistake of buying them, but now what I have found is that, unfortunately, I ended up with a whole bunch of these that I just genuinely don't need. Instead, here's what I recommend you do. ETBs are an excellent way of storing your trading cards, and the benefit is ETBs secretly come with everything you need. The packaging it comes in, that's all you need. Like the literal box, the Elite Trainer box, that's all you need, because those things can hold a pretty decent amount of trading cards. So what I usually do is keep all of my extra ultra rares, Gs, Vs, VMAXs, all the kind of extra stuff that doesn't necessarily get sorted into bulk, and everything else I quite literally just keep in stacks literally waiting to be wrapped up and sent off for bulk collection. So personally, that's the way that I go about storing any kind of bulk cards that I have. If you wanted to buy a few of these, they're super cheap. Make sure that you buy a lot of them. The reason I say that is because if you try to buy one or two, it's usually very expensive. But if you buy like 10, you'll find it's actually the same price as buying one or two. And the good news is that since they're flat, they store very easily, and they're usually easy to like put in the basement and forget about until you need them. Again, haven't really had much use for them, but that's my thoughts on these storage boxes. Finally but not least, plenty of top-loading card savers. Card savers are a great way of storing your cards. I have always advocated that card savers are better for the shipping process because they're designed for that. You can keep them long term in there too. The only pain in the neck is they don't store as nicely. And then the other thing you could possibly do is you just quite literally top loaders. Those are also great. And you can also possibly do something like screw downs. It really is up to the individual collector at that point and what your intentions are in terms of like grading things. But personally, I think if it's that expensive a card, you probably want to have it graded anyway, just so that it's encapsulated and it will perpetually always be the grade that it got. And then from there, you can kind of figure out where you're going to store your slab, right? So, then the writer of this article notes that, hey, storage is very crucial. Yeah, I definitely agree. You want to make sure that even cards in card savers are stored properly and appropriately because, that's the difference between a 9 and a 10. That's the difference between a 3 and a 10. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've seen many cards that should have gotten higher grades didn't because they quite literally got bent at some point in the shipping or, other type of handling process to PSA. So one of those things that you need to bear in mind, right? You want to store your cards, but you also want to store the cards you're storing so that they can maintain their condition as best as possible. The writer goes on to say like, hey, here's a bunch of ways that you can think about this. Obviously, there are tons of different sizes for those storage box that I was talking about. The most common I've seen is 1,000 count, but again, frankly, I would rather just get a few large priority mail boxes from PSA and then store your cards in that, knowing fully well that you're going to use those boxes to send to whatever bulk company you want to send into, and that can be the end of that. So it's one of those things, definitely recommend you take a look at those, but those priority mail boxes from USPS are perfect for this. A large priority mail box fits 7,200 cards and is free, assuming you're using it for its purpose of storing the cards up until you mail them off to PSA, or to whatever bulk company you choose to use. And again, super simple, super easy, usually fits under your bed, period, end of story. And after that, it's really just a matter of getting a binder or, whatever have you. And again, there are videos on the channel that I will leave down below in the description that should help you along that process. Next up, the article goes over something that is very important. Store in cool, dry places. Not your attic, not your basement. You need to be storing your stuff in a temperature-controlled area where you can maintain access and you can also track temperature and humidity. Those are the two things that usually cause damage to trading cards over time. The best thing you can obviously do is have a nice air-conditioned, climate-controlled unit with flood-proofing, but obviously that's not always going to be the case. So you do what you think is going to be best in order to help ensure that you're going to have the ability to maintain your cards the best they possibly can. Again, warmth and humidity are the two greatest enemies that you'll probably encounter along the storage of Pokemon cards or any cardboard for a longer period of time. Next up is displaying your cards, and this is something that I always thought was pretty interesting. So I personally don't believe in displaying many of my graded cards, and the reason I don't is because if I went through the effort of grading a card, I probably am going to have it stored away immediately because I don't want to find out that it ever gets broken, stolen, or something in between. And that's why, like many collectors, I have established several quote-unquote off-site safe boxes that I can store my cards in, knowing fully well that they are in a climate controlled environment, that is flood proof, that is in a bank. So, you know, best of luck stealing it. You know what I mean? Obviously, there is a little bit of sales that go on here. So, you know, they mention like, hey, Ultra Pro has a great set of recessed card holders and reinforced collector's albums. There's also one-touch magnetic holders, which are UV resistant and acid free. You can also get your cards graded by PSA. Note that this is PSA advertising their own services, which is about as perfect a confirmation bias example as I can possibly think. And they go over how it's sonically sealed, it's tamper evident, blah blah blah. And then you can also have your graded cards displayed in a graded card stand. So here's the the hyperlink to the single card display stand, which costs just $5 each. Super simple. There's also tons of like local ones that you can use. They fit like not only graded cards but also cards in top loaders, cards in the magnetic holders, etc., etc. And then of course there's more fancy drawn out options like this very fancy display case. So this is the oversized display. There's two that you can display either 24 or 48 cards for. So again, another really nice way of displaying your cards. And there's even a lock and key mechanism to this as well. Again, it really just depends what your style and aesthetic are, right? Some people have the ability to display their cards a little bit more proudly, whether it be in a collection room, whether it be in a particular area of the house that you know is safe. Other people, may live in an apartment building or may live in some sort of temporary housing waiting to move into a more final or stable environment, and so that could be the reason. Or it could be that you just have a whole bunch of guests over all the time and the last thing you need is a whole bunch of grubby fingers all over your favorite graded Pokemon card, and instead you'd rather just keep them hidden away for now. Maybe in the future you'll be able to display them a little bit more proudly behind some red tape and some glass shelving, hopefully. So the one thing that the article notes is, hey, never store or display your cards in those non-recessed screw-down holders. Effectively, it's just two slabs of acrylic that get screwed together and become flat. And what happens is those cards flatten out because effectively it's like taking two textbooks and putting a piece of crumpled paper between it. It'll flatten it out, and then when you try to get your cards graded, it comes back with the altered designation. Finally but not least is the preservation of cards, and this is an important piece of the collecting puzzle to remember, but an easy one to forget. Too often I've seen proud owners of vintage and modern cards with issues because they put their cardboard towards sunlit areas, which will only fade the vibrant colors in the ink. And then, you might install shelves, but you might not realize that you need to secure everything to make sure that your cards aren't going to go flying one day. Heavens forbid. And then, of course, common sense rules the day. You want to make sure that you do everything you possibly can to make sure you're storing your cards properly. A good example of that is something like this PSA case. It just literally holds 60 regular PSA graded cards. You tuck them away, you take a look at them when you want. This way you're not worried about things going flying. You're not worried about a kiddo or a doggo who decides to play with a card and heavens forbid something happens with it, or you display them perhaps a little too proudly and some sunlight ends up causing the ink on the cards to fade. So the preservation of cards, even when graded, is still a important factor. That's not going to stop the ink from fading, even though the card is technically protected by that acrylic slab, which should hopefully prevent me from chewing on it in a fit of rage. But with all that said, friends, thanks again for checking out another video. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and definitely let me know your thoughts on trading card storage and preservation. There's so many different options. It really depends where you are in life and whether or not you're in a situation to establish a little bit more of a safe space for your trading cards to be displayed without worry that they'll be stolen, broken, or damaged by external forces. So definitely let me know your thoughts on this down below. I know I'm awaiting a little bit more of a permanent situation, and once I do, I'll have the ability to display some of my collectibles a little bit more proudly. But up until then, we are patiently awaiting the day. Other than that, friends, if you're not already, feel free to subscribe to join the Gengar Gang. I appreciate your viewership as always. You could have been anywhere on the internet. You chose to spend some time with me, and that means the world. But with all that said, friends, thanks again for checking out another video, and we will talk soon. Peace.